people in similar situations around the country. I know they have a conference, but they don't have any corporate members. It's strictly members of a legislature. Am I correct in that?
You are correct, Dan. The leadership in the National Conference of State Legislatures is bipartisan. And it's, again, transparent. There are no corporations who are members of the National Conference of State Legislatures, as opposed to all of the corporate influence, the money and power that they bring to the table in the American Legislative Exchange Council. You know, the decision-making is open. It's not behind closed doors. You and I, for example, could not walk into one of these task forces that's drafting model legislation for Minnesota and the other 49 states and say, we'd like to sit in and listen to the discussion. That's not going to happen. We probably could attend any session of the National Conference of State Legislators, not as voters, of course, not with a voice or a vote, but we could observe and listen. Yeah, there's a considerable difference between these two organizations, yet it's interesting that ALEC tries to pass itself off as something akin to the National Conference of State Legislators. Same kind of an organization, fellowship and camaraderie is their goal, their mission, and again, they're just trying to be good citizens, good corporate citizens, and come up with a good, clean government.
But there's no transparency.
No transparency, right? Don't ask us to identify ourselves. Don't ask us to be specific. And whatever you do, don't think you're going to have a seat at the table and be able to participate.
Now, in November 2012, people going to the polls in Minnesota may be facing with up to 4 constitutional amendments, and all 4 are supported by ALEC. The American Legislative Exchange Council. We've done separate programs, the voter suppression, known as photo ID. Yes. We've done a program on the definition of marriage, and about a year or so ago we did one on right to work. And I really want to talk about right to work in 2012 right now. Before we start, I'll just say I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And when I was going to high school there,
great state of Michigan,
in the 1950s, we knew about right-to-work laws. It was Section 14B of Taft-Hartley, and I think every high school senior in Detroit Public Schools knew about that, and that was part of,
and rightly so,
part of what we had to learn.
Right.
Part of what we had to learn. It's less well known today. I do know that. One way to describe right-to-work legislation is that it's something that's unfair, it's unsafe, and it's unnecessary. But that's a little bit more in the area of general statements. Could you give us some specific thoughts about right to work?
I'll certainly try, Dan. What's interesting to me is that right out of the box, if you will, here in Minnesota, the proponents of right to work have suggested that we need this in Minnesota. We need to amend our state constitution to insert this right to work for less provision. And they say that we need to do this because it'll enhance the job creation ability of employers in Minnesota. Minnesota will have a plethora of jobs and we'll get back to full employment again. And nothing could be further from the truth. The exact number, I may be off a state or two, but I think there's about 23 states in the United States that are so-called right-to-work states. And there hasn't been one until recently. I think Indiana adopted a right-to-work law, and the governor there, I think Mitch Daniels is his name, Governor Daniels, signed it into law. That's been the first right-to-work law that's passed in the United States for many, many, many years. The states that have right-to-work, without exception, have lower wages for their people, for their citizens. The states that are not right-to-work states, like Minnesota, enjoy a higher wage for the citizens. Again, the main focus of right-to-work is to cripple the workers' organizations, the labor movement, the unions, and to make it so that they have a great deal of difficulty in terms of representing their members. It's interesting to me that they want to maintain laws that said if, in fact, the workers select representation, if they have a union, you have to represent them. If you don't, you can be hit with a failure to represent, and the Right to Work, the National Right to Work Committee has, of course, done that around the country in order to cause difficulty for workers in their unions. They filed lawsuits to say, well, you failed to represent this individual in a right to work state. This individual is in the bargaining unit. You failed to represent him. They say you have to represent them, but you're not going to be able to have them as members. They don't have to pay anything if they're in the bargaining unit to have union representation, to have the union fight for them. We're going to establish by law that you have to represent them, but we're also going to establish with right to work that they don't have to contribute anything to the support of the rest of the workers in the bargaining unit who are union members. So that's a big distinction.
In a kind way, I would say that they are freeloaders. And
That's one way of putting it.
In a little bit of an unkind way, I would say they're parasites.
You could say that also,
yeah,
yes.
So.
But again, that's what the fight is about, and what they're trying to do with right to work and with this constitutional amendment is to undercut the ability of workers to have any influence, to have any equality in the workplace, to reduce the workers and their unions, if they have a union that they voted for through democratic procedures. They want to make sure that that organization is at the mercy of the employers as a result of a right to work law. It's very clever. Whoever came up with that right to work moniker, was very clever, and it suggests to a lot of people that, well, they're going to guarantee me a job.
Yeah.
Well, nothing could be further from the truth. What they're talking about is, if you are lucky enough to get employment, you can almost bet that it's going to be for a lower wage than your coworkers who are in the labor movement.
Okay. Now let's switch gears and go back to a national focus now. In 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court had a 5-4 decision entitled Citizens United. And,
They did.
And the 5-4 decision said that corporations are citizens and they are entitled to free speech. Now my question, should a legislator of any party feel that he or she is representing citizens/corporations, or should a legislator be accountable to citizens who are living, breathing human beings?
Well,
is there a difference?
Yeah, I definitely think, Dan, that elected officials should absolutely, unequivocally be accounted to the citizens, living, breathing human beings who elected them, who actually went out and voted to elect them to public office. The U.S. Supreme Court's 5-4 decision in Citizens United represents, I think, an affront to common sense. It just is so nonsensical that it defies logic. And I think it is a threat to our very system of government, of by and for the people. The decision of the court, I think, now firmly establishes the notion in our system that it's government of and by and for the corporations. Money, influence, political power by the 1%, and the corporations will now rule our country. I think we're headed pell-mell in that direction at the expense of the people. We saw what happened in Wisconsin with what the erstwhile governor of that state, Governor Walker, tried to do. We saw what the citizens in Ohio did there with regard to the union-busting legislation that was passed there. People are rising up because they understand intuitively, if not, right away, that we've now had a change in direction in our government since 2010 with the election of some of these radical right-wing individuals, and we're going to have to stand up and be counted as citizens. I think it's interesting. I think it was Warren Buffett who made the observation some time ago in a discussion about, class warfare and the transfer of wealth and the struggle that's involved there in our country, and the fact that more and more of our national income and the resources are flowing to fewer and fewer people at the top, the 1/10 of 1%, or the 1%, if you will. And he made the observation that there there is indeed class warfare going on, and he said, my class has won it. We've
Yes.
won it. And I think that's being brutally honest, and he's right about that. But this Supreme Court decision, it's even been suggested now that there be congressional action and that there even be some kind of amendment to the U.S. Constitution to establish once and for all that corporations are not people.
Now, you mentioned money, and I'll just add just briefly on my own comment here that the Citizens United case led to the mushrooming of what are called SuperPACs.
Yes.
Where there's
yes.
Unlimited amount of money
Yes.
that can be raised
Yes.
in behalf of a candidate.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to cover one more.
Just
go
a
ahead.
footnote on that, Dan, just quickly, the impact of that is that, we're seeing 1 million and 5 million, and there's even been discussion about $100 million contributions to candidates, through these super PACs. Yeah. They're not coordinating with the candidates, but they've set up these super PACs. Now, contrast that with your $5 or my $10 or
Yeah.
somebody else's $25, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. The day is going to be carried by the multi-million-dollar contributors.
Yeah, and I'm even stretching at $50 or maybe $100 absolute top maximum.
Yeah.
And someone can write out a check for 5 million here, or
10 million, 20 million, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last topic.
Yes.
Before we close, public schools. That's one of the areas of interest of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. Is ALEC a friend or a foe of public schools?
That's an easy one. Public education is viewed by ALEC as something to be attacked, to denigrated, to be destroyed. They're a fierce opponent of public education. They submit and support legislation that transfers public money to private education at the expense of the public sector. The continuous attack on teachers and their rights to organize collectively. They'd like to, I'm sure, bust the unions that teachers have formed. They've attacked salary and seniority and dispute resolution. There's no question that ALEC is a fierce opponent of public education.
Okay, we have painted a very bleak picture of ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange
organization.
I don't think we've overstated it. I feel like, as working men and women, I feel like the ALEC is maybe an octopus and is reaching out with his tentacles and squeezing us in the middle class and trying to do as much as possible to do as much harm as possible. So I know you would join me in hoping that our viewers will support candidates who support the middle class. They can stuff envelopes, they can do phone bags, they can pound signs, they can telephone, they can send cash donations. But even if they don't do any of that, they can still vote.
Be vigilant, be educated, be vigilant, and watch what's going on.
Yes. So, in behalf of Minnesota AFL-CIO, State Retiree Council, I thank you for being on this program and for bringing us good news. I shouldn't say good news, for bringing us up-to-date news about ALEC and its concerns in the state of Minnesota. And
you're very welcome. Thank you, Dan.
And I thank our award-winning director Roger Carlson and his retiree crew for helping present this program, and I thank the viewers for joining with us on cable or YouTube or however they are seeing this program. So I thank you, and we look forward to future programs on significant public policy issues.